Hello campers, hope you're all well. It's been a while since our last talk. We're now talking October 2023. Our last talk was in May. I was busy releasing a book, and Malcolm has been busy, and we're just going to have another loose talk for this year regarding the 60th documentation and semi-retirement. What's it like?
Wonderful. I mean, I did manage to get almost a month in Gran Canaria in most of September, actually. And when I came back, I was really chilled out. It was like I was almost in the wallpaper on the wall. I was really, so I think semi or total retirement would actually suit me very well.
Really?
Yeah.
Total retirement from JFK.
Yeah.
I find that hard to imagine, Malcolm.
Well, let me think. I'd be, modestly interested, I think. But all the heavy duty stuff, all the heavy lifting I think I've done over many years is... it's hard to find equivalent people. I mean, you're an equivalent person because you dig and dig and dig, and you're really evidence orientated, you're really fact orientated. But a lot of the stuff out there is I believe that, I think that, maybe this, maybe that, which is just not my bag.
No, nor is it mine. I'm not convinced by other people's opinions. Like I said last time, opinions don't count. Because everybody's got one, and I wish people would do their best a bit more in trying to ascertain what actually happened, what are the facts, what does the documentation say, what do the pictures say, or the videotapes and so forth. And that's only done to a certain extent, and I always think there's more. And the funny thing is that now with the release of my book, I never thought there was so much more.
There is more. I think way more than even the stuff that you've picked up in my files. I just think there's a tremendous amount of material that still lives in collections that we haven't got to,
There's a lot of undiscovered, which brings us also to, of course, we're talking about the documents, the release of the documents, the bits that are missing and so forth. Now, with your collection and the VRIF numbers that are present, we found a lot of material of which hasn't been released as such, or simply hasn't been scanned and released as such. I mean, my thing from reading all the paperwork that you gave me over the last 5 years is that...
Is it 5 years?
Yeah, since 2018, exactly October 2018. Yeah.
Good God.
So from reading these 165,000 pages, basically I find out that a lot of stuff that has been released has not been digitized as such and is not available as such. And what we just talked about, like now with the 60th coming up and the so-called releases since 2017, 2018, and what's been released in the last say 12 to 18 months. They've had all these mini releases and things that were still redacted, say maybe 18 months ago. All of a sudden they have certain things where the redactions have been taken away and so forth. And then there are the people that look at it and moan and groan about it without even understanding what it's all about, and just say, well, there's nothing, and there's nothing of importance in there. And that's because they don't understand the bigger picture. Nor do I, but I'm trying to understand something. The emphasis is all the time on the missing documents, whereas I wonder, why aren't people actually focusing on what's actually has been released?
I would agree with that up to a point, I think, but we have to make the case for how on earth do we have so many documents missing. This is not by accident. This is a deliberate policy carried out almost on autopilot for years and years and years. I mean, the classic big one, the black hole, is in the church committee files.
Yeah.
And it's just like so much of that material has gone missing.
Yeah. That one is definitely standing head and shoulders above the others. I mean, the HSCA has got a few missing bits as well, serious amount of it, but the church committee has definitely a lot of stuff missing. You know?
Yeah, and when we talk about what documents should be released, one of the most important documents to be released, which is still classified, is the 8-binder index of all the incoming, outgoing documents, the actual index of the totality of the church committee. Is a full 8-binder index, and that's classified, and that is in Archives 1, and the ARB ascertained that was still there and classified, and they didn't seem to attempt to try and get it open. So I don't know what happened there. I think if we knew the totality,
yeah, we know what's missing.
What documents existed, and what people the church committee actually spoke to.
So,
and the length of time. I mean, I always bang on about Donald Deniselia, who was in the Foreign Documents Division and claimed that he saw an Oswald debriefing report. And when I interviewed Donald Deniselia, but it's interesting when you try and go to find Deniselia documents, he testified. He told me for several hours to the church committee. None of that stuff can be found.
of course not.
None.
Oh.
Absolutely none. And then, God bless him, he showed up with the House Select Committee on Assassinations. In a small handwritten note, he gave them permission to, go after his church committee testimony, gave them the date. And that's not extant in the HSCA files. It's not there at all. And even when you go into the document register, which is in 3 boxes, there's nothing of any importance to do with the church committee testimony logged into their index, into the House Select Committee on Assassinations index. So you have to ask yourself, why is that? What did Donald say over those hours?
The Donald.
Yeah, what did Donald didn't say?
So
that's so important that they're going to deep six it.
yeah, I didn't know you interviewed Donald.
Yeah.
When was this?
2016, I think.
Oh, right. Not that long ago.
No, 2015, 2016.
How did that come about?
Another researcher, Joan Mellon,
Okay.
was in touch with Donald, and
She set it up.
she set it up. Yeah.
And how did that go?
It went very well. I met him in a hotel in Bowie. They call it Bowie, Bowie,
Okay.
which is, we would call it Bowie.
Right.
Bowie.
Right.
Bowie in Maryland. Actually, Jeff Morley gave me a lift out there. I don't think he knew I was actually interviewing Donald, but that's what I went out there for. And to a small hotel out there, and we spent 4.5 hours going through things.
What did you discuss?
Well, we discussed his view. It was actually, by the sound of it, it was actually cut into several different sections. The Oswald debrief in New York. In other words, it wasn't. He had one section, and somebody else in another section, somebody else in another section. So he didn't have the totality of it. But he confirmed there was a total debrief of Oswald. It wasn't just like, just a couple of pages. It was a whole lot of material. Done in New York, I think he said. Done in New York, in CIA field office.
So is this after Oswald came back from his defection?
Yes.
So we're talking 62?
62.
Late 62, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then he said, one time, not long after, I think, sometime in 63, before he left the agency, I think he left in 64, It must have been after the assassination, because he said he came across Jim Angleton wandering one of the corridors and mentioned to him about this debrief. And Angleton turned to him and said, "That can't be found," and walked on. Which I thought was a great quote. So, yeah, but I think the fact that HSCA couldn't surface the Dennisay testimony is very telling. I think it is clearly of some importance.
Well, the fact that if they discuss a debrief, that means that the CIA basically talked to Oswald before he assassinated Kennedy.
Well, I think what it's a bit like Victor Marchetti. There's another guy that testified to the church committee, and we're down to 2 pages, and 2 pages of notes on Marchetti. Absolutely fascinating. He testified for 4.5 hours.
Yeah.
2 pages?
Yeah.
This is like, this is what, in the end, that's why you get semi-retired or retired. You just get depressed with it because, like, you think of all the stuff that you would love to get. You can't get your hands on it. That's what...
the way I look at it is like, well, not knowing about something that's supposed to exist is one thing, but then knowing about something when it does exist, but then know it's mega...
It just hit on it. It's like, the other guy, Orestes Pena, his church committee testimony went missing, that's missing. I know everybody talks about Hemming in derogatory terms, but he did know stuff. In amongst all the bullshit, he did know stuff. And his church committee testimony is missing,
Jerry Pedler Hemming?
Yeah,
right.
That's missing. And Robert, his brother, told me that Jerry testified for, I could believe it, 8.5 hours. 8.5 hours.
That's a whole day's worth.
There's a lot of stuff.
That is a lot of stuff. There's a lot of talking. There's a lot of pages.
Well, like Jerry could talk.
Yeah, I know. I've seen some of the videos of him. I saw that video you gave me of Gordon Winslow and a few others that spoke to him in Florida, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. But you've had interactions with Gerald Patrick Hemming yourself.
Sure. Yeah.
How many times?
Oh, many times. Lots of emails. It's on. I think it's on one of the floppies I gave you.
Right.
Two floppies with all my emails back and forwards with Hemming. Would be 99.
Right.
Yeah. He was very productive in year 1999. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. I mean, he's an interesting guy. I mean, I think he made a lot of stuff up, but that kept him alive.
Yeah.
Kept him alive.
Probably. But like I say, there's always a sense of truth in all that stuff. But of course, it's the trick is to find out
which is which.
Yeah, which is which is bullshit and which is the truth.
Yeah.
Now, regarding the documents, the releases, let's go back to that for a mo. What have you discovered yourself? I mean, did you look in the releases?
I did. I jotted down lots of numbers. CIA numbers, the 104 dash whatever it is.
Oh, you mean the RIF numbers?
Yeah. What documents I was interested in, with the intent of going back, but I never did get back. But with just little handwritten notes saying why I was interested in those. I think I did a lot of that. I don't know where they are.
Oh, that's cool. Maybe in the second part we can bring that up.
Handwritten notes. So, yeah, as I recall, there were quite some interesting bits and pieces, mainly to do with cover, corporations and bits and pieces of cover for people under defence cover, the Department of Defence cover I never knew were under the Department of Defence, stuff like that. And then the one that really sort of lit my fuse, because I was looking at, been looking at Vesiana, as you know, for 7 years, and tiny details, you know, of great significance when you're trying to work out Veneziano in particular, because, boy, was he opaque. I mean, the guy talked a lot, but he didn't tell us very much. He spoke a lot, but we don't know much. And one of his contacts based in New York was a guy called Robert Pratchett, who I could never work out, was he a CIA operative under commercial cover? And then I think it was they released in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
I think it may have been in 2019, or was it later? No, it could be even later. Not this last release, but maybe the release before. They released the address of the work address, and that was fascinating, because Pratchett worked for H. Pike in New York, a sugar broker, and it's at 120 Wall Street, which is like, if you want a hotbed of extreme Cuban exile activity, it's 120 Wall Street.
Really?
Because you had the biggest sugar broker in the world, Julio Lobo. His main office, his trading office was there, and beyond that, it was a place often visited by personalities like Irving Davidson and masses of stuff. The people like Farr and Whitlock, companies like Farr and Whitlock, which were CIA-friendly companies, Norris Grain Company. This was a hotbed of getting rid of Castro. This is where a lot of the funding came from, out of 120 Wall Street.
Right.
And so we have Veneziano's contact there, Robert Pratchett, who's sometimes mentioned in CIA cables. I found that fascinating.
What do we know then? Is it easy to find out who Robert Pratchett is and was?
I haven't found out that much. I don't know whether that's an alias. I haven't worked that out.
No.
But the location's just fascinating,
Yeah.
really, because
120 Wall Street.
of where it is.
Okay.
And,
So for the
it's-
viewers, if you have any information on Robert Pratchett by any chance, please mention it in the comments,
Yeah.
and I will forward it to Malcolm. Any help is greatly appreciated.
Yeah, the firm is the business he was working for was H. Pike. So if anybody can do any research on that.
P-I-K-E?
Yeah, P-I-K-E.
H. Pike. Okay.
So you get stuff like that, and I'm sure there'll be more of that stuff. If one pays attention to it as it comes out. But you have to do your homework. You have to understand what you're looking at, because that's going to go. If you don't know anything about that, if you haven't read CIA cables, you haven't read any of that stuff, how are you going to know? You're not going to know. Of the importance of that address, 120 Wall Street. You have to remember that Lobo was really a good friend. If Alan Dulles had any good friends, he was one. A good friend of Alan Dulles.
Right.
So there we go, fascinating stuff.
Yeah, it is.
Fascinating stuff.
Now, with the documents, I mean, here's the thing. I mean, maybe I'm just plain stupid. I see people already nodding at home. But I find all this mega interesting, and I read all of it and all that. But how much has this got to do with the JFK assassination?
Yeah, that's a good question.
And the chase for the documents as such as well, the missing documents.
This is where there's schism, isn't it? There's the people like yourself that look at Dealey Plaza, and they see that's where the action is, and there are other people that look at a larger picture. And both.
No, both have merit
both
to me.
have a merit,
yeah, no, I don't disagree with that. But when I'm talking about, say, the missing documents, and then I mean, Jeff Morley has been a massive advocate for getting these documents out and so forth, for instance.
Well, of course,
Okay.
Jeff is looking for the Joanidis stuff, you know.
Yeah. I mean, there's merit in that, you know, finding out what he was doing in New Orleans when Oswald was there at the same time.
I think it's very important,
Yeah.
the activity in New Orleans when Oswald was down there, and the number of people that seemed to be drafted in, which were quite heavy hitters, you know, Margaret Forsyth and Joanidis and Tom Trattin. And,
Yeah, what are these people doing in New Orleans?
Bill Kent and people like that. They were obviously there for a reason. There was something going on. Or is it just a coincidence that Oswald was there around that time? I don't think so.
And also, of course, New Orleans was a hotbed for anti-Castro activities as much as it was in Florida.
Absolutely,
You know?
yeah, totally. Yeah. And then, of course, you had the being a port city. You would have. We've never seen that stuff ever. We go back to missing documents. The
Customs.
Cesar Diosdado,
Yeah.
was in Miami. Was a co-opted customs agent, and if they do it in Miami, they do it in all the port cities. It's not just one. So none of that material from the U.S. Customs has ever surfaced. The U.S. Customs is sad, really, because the documentation, you cannot see a space on the page. It's just, when you see a U.S. Customs document, and you can still find a few. There are a few in Alex Rourke's FBI files. You see those pages and then you get sick to the stomach because US Customs just put everything on a page. It didn't leave anything out. That was it.
There's no blank space.
No blank spaces
Really?
on there. I mean, they're very full, descriptive documents. And obviously, in the summer of '63, you would have had co-opted customs agents working. I mean, there was actually one that Schweiker went after, and I think they don't seem to have got to him, but they may have got to him. It may be one of the lost documents within the church committee. But if we had the 8-binder index, we could find out whether they actually interviewed or deposed a guy called David Smith, who was, from my memory, was transferred very soon after the assassination from New Orleans to somewhere in California. A lot of people were moved after the assassination, including Army intelligence people were moved around. So I don't think that's a coincidence either. So yeah, there's lots of stuff. It's and what we're going for, I think, is at the end of the day, I think a lot of CIA stuff is going to be generally not believe relevant. In amongst it, there are going to be some snippets, and the snippets could be very important, very important. It's like I was talking about Pratchett and H.H. Pike and stuff like that. That's tells you the reason. They held that back for how many years? Years and years and years, decades they held that name back. Well, both the names, H.H. Pike, where Pratchett worked. So it has significance.
Oh, yeah, I was about to say
Understanding what it signifies is the problem.
Yeah. Yeah. And that makes it interesting because of the fact that it's been redacted, that name has been redacted for so long. And then people start looking into it. And the thing is, one thing that I find interesting is the fact that it's easier to search for someone these days through the internet than it was 25, 30 years ago.
Absolutely.
So if they'd given that name out back then, it would have been a lot more difficult to gather more information about it. You would have to get going and basically try to talk to people directly or phone them up and so forth. Whereas now these days, with things being digitized so much, well, not enough apparently, but with what has been digitized, things get picked up. Now with artificial intelligence creeping in, because that's going to be of great assistance to searching records, and much quicker and faster. I mean, it's going to help, you know, contrary to what a lot of people think, that the robots are going to take over and all that malarkey. It's just the fact that basically it enables you to work faster than you were doing before. Basically,
there's one robot's taken over already.
Which one?
Joe Biden.
Oh dear. But you know, so that becomes kind of interesting. It's something I'm going to delve in next year. There are ways of basically going through the archives, the documents of the archives, and find things a lot quicker by using artificial intelligence. It's just by basically learning how to write, how to search for the documents inside the archives as such. Something I'll learn, and I will gladly share that knowledge with you, so you can basically, you know, because that's one of the benefits of artificial intelligence. It makes you do things a lot faster than we have been doing for the last 25, 30 years with PCs and Macs and all the information on the internet so far.
Yeah, I mean, we've had, you know, there's a few heroes in, you know, actually digitised it besides yourself. I mean, Clayton Ogilvy's done like.
Yes, the Weisberg archive, phenomenal job.
Slogging away.
Yeah, and he's one of the first ones who did it, and I'm still really impressed with it because of the simplicity of it. For those that, you know, it's the first archive I dug into, which was back in 2015 when I knew about it, and basically Clayton did a really good job by just organizing everything by alphabet and with all the names in it. And it's really basic. It's like, it's even, without sounding detrimental, it's more boring than Google. Basically, you don't get distracted. You're just looking at text. So what you're looking for, you're not getting distracted by GIFs and graphics and God knows what else. Now we're looking at documents. Here's a list. Oh, I find that name, click on that name, and we just get a whole pile of PDFs. Now, the only issue I have with is that the files are just numbered 1 to whatever the last number is of that particular PDF. But I used Clayton's way of doing things for doing your archive.
Okay.
And because I love the simplicity of it, because I don't want to be distracted, and I just, you know, because I've got a search going on and I want to search that particular person, and I don't want to get distracted, because, you know, I want the results, and I want to build and see if I can find something, and yes, okay, great, all right, I can mark that off because I found such and such a document. The difference is that I started to name the titles as well of inside the document. I didn't do riffs. The riffs are included, the riff sheets are included if they're there, but I wanted to basically, if someone did a quick search on the key names would be in the title of the actual document as such. That enables people, and on the side, of course, the content itself, sometimes names are mentioned just once, say Alvarado for instance, then it will just be in there. If the name gets mentioned, then the document will just pop up. But I wanted to make search as easy and convenient as possible for the layman, basically a woman, to basically go through it as such. That was important. And so this year I'll just take a break. Did about 15,000 pages. About 2,500 PDFs will be added on for the 60th. There'll be a blog post on the Dealey Plaza UK website, and there will the link to the additional files which will be added to the current stable already. There's a lot of CIA stuff to be added on because that's what was left over from your collection as such. And but some of it is very, very interesting, and you know what, there's so many things in that archive, and I basically wanted to focus just on Dallas, Dealey Plaza, Oswald, last 48 hours, that kind of thing. Don't get distracted by anything else. Keep it as concise as possible. As soon as something sidesteps from that particular area, it's not that I'm not interested, it's just not useful for what I'm doing. but there is just so much in that archive. I'm almost inclined to say, like, well, New Orleans is an incredible chapter, and you know, Garrison, of course, is a massive important ingredient of that New Orleans thing. But there's much more.
Very contentious person, really, very controversial. But you know, I think the guy did as well as he could do.
Yeah.
In difficult circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, some of the interviews he did. The thing is, like, I found a Roger Craig interview that I first only had 2 pages of, and now it was 4 pages, and this, I'm pretty certain, is the interview that got him in really hot water, because those 4 pages, he basically explains certain things in Dallas the way it was from a crime perspective and investigations and certain names that I hadn't heard before. And he was really knowledgeable about that. And I'm going, well, you know what, that's actually of no business to someone in New Orleans as such, but the people in Dallas are going to go, what are you flapping on about? Things in Dallas to the DA in New Orleans, and with a particular level of detail to it, where some people say, you should have kept quiet about that.
Did you, I was asking a lot because you scanned so many documents, but I remember copying from ARRB files. I think it was the 5 series, and it was Paul Hoke's file.
Well, I got a lot of stuff from Hogue.
Yeah, but this was an enclosure from Paul Hoke of quite a bunch of Garrison documents.
Yeah.
You think?
I think I've got that.
Okay, that's good, because you know I thought, well, no, I would have, you know.
I think Hogue did really valuable research back in the 70s. You know, the things that
Well, it's like, you know, he doesn't like Garrison very much, but I mean, it's interesting that at least he made those documents available to the review board to look at.
And the military intelligence angle.
The military
during
intelligence.
the HSCA is just.
He really worked hard on that.
That's phenomenal, because. So for those that don't know, the military intelligence did report about matters on Oswald before and after the assassination, and during, just like on that day itself, which you can read in my book about Robert E. Jones and what's his name, Stephen Weiss, and those files were never submitted to the Warren Commission. The FBI, who was in charge of doing all that type of stuff, didn't hand them over to the Warren Commission, and it's only like during the HSCA that military intelligence stuck its neck out, basically, as an agency that would basically, you know, with Robert E. Jones and the whole Heidel matter, as for instance, and Oswald defecting and so forth, and that was never mentioned during the Warren Commission period at all.
No, but you know, you just jogged my memory. There's when we talk about getting documents. I mean, the guy that was in charge of the military files, including Oswald's military intelligence file, the naval intelligence file, all that stuff, was a DOD, Department of Defense lawyer called John McNaughton, who I know Paul Hoke has got an interest in. Here was a guy that was like micromanaging the giving out of this information to the Warren Commission. Some material got to the Warren Commission, but the military intelligence file never got there. But the interesting thing is, all these people have papers. Where are John McNaughton's papers? I mean, this was a guy of such importance. I mean, where is the material? Don't tell me he didn't leave any.
No,
he must have done.
Buried inside a mountain somewhere in the middle of nowhere with all the other thousands
Well,
of
maybe, somebody
cabinets.
listening to this might say, oh, I know, I'll go and see if I can find where John McNaughton's papers are. DOD lawyer.
Let us know in the comments if you do.
I mean, it's just it's endless of important people that have. We should have papers for some of these people. It was interesting when J.D. Rankin's papers were released. There was such a great amount of information in there, including all the drafts, the rough drafts, from people like John Hart Ely and Slawson and.
No, you got a fair amount of that.
I did, but you could never get. You never get what.
It's never enough.
Try and copy all that stuff. I mean, I get bitched at for the absence of riffs, but I did the best I could. And one of the things I did was make a lot of notes, and Joe Backus recently, I think, sent his regards. To me,
On Facebook?
DP UK, I think.
No, on Facebook. I posted a document on David Ferry that I came across, and I thought I'd scanned in, but it wasn't scanned in. So I scanned it in. I was like, all right, okay, I'll just share this on Facebook quickly.
But I did send Joe a big bag of my handwritten notes. They're probably illegible.
Probably drove him nuts.
But those were notes I made as I went through, where I didn't had time to copy. I just had the intent of going back, because you never do. Although with the HSCA numbered files, I think there were 302 boxes. I went through those 302 boxes forwards and backwards. And I did copy a lot of that stuff, but at the same time I did make a lot of notes, and Joe has that material, but whether he can't face looking at it or not, I don't know. I mean,
Well, it has no riff, so there you go.
It has no riff.
Yeah, so...
Well, I mean, documents there, and numbers are there, yeah. But I can understand if he doesn't want to look at it. But I mean, I think it's... at least he saved it, which is good. Well, I think he saved it. But Joe's a good researcher. He's been around right from the beginning.
Yeah.
I think I've known him right from the get-go, from the early 90s, really, from early to mid-90s. And when we used to be at the archives together. So he's a good guy. He's always tried to do his best.
Yeah.
I remember his work following the Records Review Board around the country, and absolutely doing a lot of substantial work to get reports out on what they were doing, what they were thinking, and good stuff. Very good stuff.
So, speaking of archives, you gonna go back?
I do think of it sometimes, and I think, oh God.
It's been a few years now. 2017, 2018?
I think 2017, wasn't it? Or was it 2018?
I think it was 2018.
Okay.
Earlier, like spring.
Yeah,
I think.
Could be.
So it's what, 5 and a bit years ago, 5.5.
But to have the energy to do that is just like.
It's a frustrating. I mean, I've got to experience it at least once. If I go to the state next year, then I will put a trip to Washington in the calendar. But and I'm ready to be frustrated. A friend of mine has been there about 3 or 4 times for me. And every time he used to say, every time he came out, he said, crock of shit. Incredibly frustrating how to get stuff. And finally, when it does arrive, it's incomplete, or there's nothing there, or the quality of it is rubbish.
I think to a certain extent, at the beginning, certainly when the review board was sitting, when you went to National Archives, there was a chance you could actually get stuff. You could request stuff. And I used when the Records Review Board went out of business. They put all their stuff into NARA with a 6-week timescale on it. They had to process that stuff at NARA in 6 weeks. Huge amount of material. And of course, when you look through that, particularly there was a guy came from the Justice Department senior attorney Ron Harron. And
Okay, yeah.
Ron Harron's stuff is really tremendous help to researchers. I would always start there, you know, because that's going to give you lots of signposts of where to look. You know, I think his stuff was some of the best stuff. But the staff there at that time, mostly were quite helpful. I mean, I had a couple of clashes. I had a problem with...
You? Clashes?
Yeah, I had a problem. Yeah. I had a problem because I went in wearing a... This sounds funny to our British audience, wearing a vest, which is like, you know, one of these fisherman's jackets.
Yeah.
And because I had so many pockets in,
Yeah.
I had no problem for ages and ages going through security. They just waved me through, and then somebody in upstairs in room 2000 said, "You can't wear that jacket." I said, "I've been coming in for 9 months wearing it." Anyway, I was forced, you know,
To remove the vest.
Don't wear it, and so I decided to do. I saw the FBI people that came in and spooks that came in. They could wear a jacket. They were allowed to wear a jacket. You know, and that had multiple pockets in it. Of course, you had inside pockets, top pockets. So.
Wasn't it Sandy Berger, or who was his name, who got caught with...
That's right, Sandy Berger. He was caught stuffing his trousers with documents. He was going through to the classified section. There's a classified section beyond room 2000. When you go into room 2000, which is a research room, there's a separate room where you have to have a special pass to get through.
Oh, yes.
Goes there. And I've been there a few times, but mainly to discuss with the military historian that was there at the time, John Taylor, who was a fantastic guy. Very, very helpful to researchers. So we can't tar everybody in Narrow with the same brush, but let's put it this way. Some people were very helpful, and some people just went in with a zero attitude. The customer relations with those people was not good, but some people were very good, and I named them in the book. You know, they were very good, even though some people I did argue with.
Yeah, well, sometimes it's good to have a little jimmy jammy, you know. I mean.
But the second one was I had there was mistreatment of documents. In other words, not putting the stuff back in the boxes properly and all the rest of it. I had all that, and I was lucky. I had an archivist there. One of the staff actually on the floor in room 2000 defended me, which was very good. But I still got threatened with
Expulsion.
yeah, you know, they've withdrawn my research card, but it all got settled down in the end. But and it's true that when you're rushing, you probably don't put every document back in a correct way into our books. So I hold up my hand on that one. But equally, Nara took carts, which I'd spent days tabbing, you know, I put in the tabs in for copying. They took a complete cart, like 5 days work down the tube, gone. No explanation.
There's nothing
so yeah,
for you
I mean,
to see. Nothing here for you to see, Mr. Blunt.
But yeah, right. But I mean, I think it is almost personality driven. You do if you get a good one, We had a tremendous guy in year 2000, a guy that came up from Archives 1, and he was fantastic. He could not do enough. If you said to him, "This document is classified," and he said, "Oh, is it still classified?" "Oh yeah, I'll call them up. I'll call the FBI up. I'll call the CIA up." They're very, very proactive, which is what you want to hear. You don't want to hear negative stuff coming back. "Oh, we're not going to look any further and all this crap," which I had, you know, with the church committee files, because I'm sure there's still lots of stuff buried in the church committee in Archives 1, which was never surfaced during the two main searches. The first search with the church committee archivists, and a second search with a few review board staffers and five interns for a week, well, which is 5 days. They surfaced 16 boxes. So, but I'm sure there's much more stuff there.
Well, they're going to have a massive job on their hands, because if Biden says that everything needs to be digitized, well, if they get digitized and if they surface and so forth. But, like last time when we spoke, we were talking about the HSCA finders aids. What was this again?
Yeah, income and outgoing document register, which is
Yes.
3 boxes. Actually, some of that stuff was released quite recently. I don't know whether anybody was watching our interview. It's released, and it's basically the sort of stuff which is to do with agency handbooks, their own HQ regulations and stuff like that. So it's pretty esoteric stuff. So some of it has been released, but I mean, there's an awful lot of blacked out material in those 3 boxes. Still, as I say, key people like Dennis Lear. Where are all the where's all the paperwork that was generated when Dennis gave them permission to look at his church committee testimony? None of that's there. That's not there. Individuals that wrote in, banged on about the Louise Steenbarger stuff, about the trip, the plane trip from a US base to Prestwick in Scotland and then on to Frankfurt, where Mrs. Steenbarger said that was someone with the name Oswald on the jacket. This is like the right time frame, October 59. So all that stuff was interesting. And it gets more interesting because you can find no trace in the document register. And then when I went to the incoming letters and outgoing letters, incoming letters from the public, there's not a trace of Steenbarger. And yet they did interview her in the end, and they released that interview. But what did she say in her letters?
Yeah.
You know?
Now, regarding church, did you ever try to contact the committee members, any chance, or why not?
No, I never did.
Why not?
Oh, we left it to, I suppose we're delegated to Nara, thinking they obviously had more influence, which they do. If they're going to listen to a senior archivist at Nara when they come and say, we'd like to do this. But unfortunately the JFK, the Special Collections, Special Access staff, head at that time decided she wasn't going to do it. Exact words to me were, we won't be looking anytime soon. So,
This was how long ago?
that would have been 13 years ago.
Oh, there's time left.
But that's the sort of stuff that does depress you, really.
Yeah.
You think,
No, I
you think
understand.
they would take, to take people down that and just have one more attempt. No, don't take interns down there. God bless them, they do their best. But don't take interns. Take people down to look at those files that know what they're looking at. So there you get it. That's the sort of stuff you get. Just so much, really, in regard to documents. I think the trail is not what's left, as you said, it's not what's left. It's what's already existing that's still redacted, still classified, still not released.
Yeah, that's part of it. I mean, my grievance is that researchers in general, and maybe that's too generalizing, but I don't think that there's not enough effort put into actually looking into the material that has been released already, And instead, some people are focusing too much about the stuff that hasn't been released yet. Whereas I say, like, hold on a minute, do you actually know what's in the stuff that has been released at this point? Because
Well, the answer to that would be no, they don't know any of that, really. You have to go back to the, when you were looking at particularly your stuff, you have to go back to the, day one. And FBI files, there was a lot of material in FBI files, a lot of conflicting material, which you probably discovered. It's just so many things conflict in FBI files within the first 48 hours or 72 hours.
well, especially now, which is going to be part of book 2, the Dallas police evidence, for instance, and the FBI, the photographing of that particular evidence, and the huge discrepancies and gaps that are actually between both the Dallas police and the FBI. And I mean, back then Malcolm in 1999 came up with 6 scenarios with the paperwork you had at that point. I don't know what you got afterwards, but at that point you came up with 6 different scenarios, because the dating on certain documents absolutely do not coincide with how the Dallas police had the particular films developed and processed and shared, and then with the FBI doing the same thing. And
you just really got to an important point, which is FBI in particular dated their documents, and those dates, tracking those dates through which people saw which document at what time, is very important. I used to, as I remember, photocopy the backs of it, because you'd have these stamps on the back.
Yeah, you've done that. Yeah, I've got a few. There's an extra page at the end of the document with the stamps on it. Some of them had like half a dozen stamps on them.
Well, it's important because, when you're relating to trail of evidence, you know when it was supposed to arrive, who looked at it, where, when. And when you get so many fairy stories that get invented, you can go back to that.
Yeah, you're full of it because such and such a document states completely the opposite. Yeah. This is something I miss a lot in interviews. People basically, and that's part of it, they didn't have access to that material. But also, I think also on a few occasions it was neglected as such, is that when you have an interview with someone, they don't have the documentation, so therefore they don't have that specific knowledge that they can actually talk to that individual and say, well, back then you said such and such. A great example is John Newman about 12 years ago, when he, was it Jane Roman or was it the other CIA lady? I forgot her name. And he basically put it down because she signed something off and it made it look really fishy, and he basically got her, just like boom.
I think that was in Oswald and the CIA.
Yeah.
Originally.
Yeah.
I think he had that there.
Is it Jane Roman? I think it was Jane Roman. I'm sorry if
I think it was Jane Roman, because she really was not happy with John Newman.
No, but basically he caught her out with the documentation. And I remember that William Law did an interview with Jim Lavelle about, I don't know, 9 months before he passed away. And he said it after the fact. I spoke to him and he goes, yeah, I spoke to Jim Lavelle. And I was like, oh my God, I wish I knew you told me that, because I would have given you the documentation so you could just say, how can you say that when you say this in the documentation? Yeah. It's right here in front of you. Yeah. This is a key bit that's missing from many interviews. And like I said earlier, some of it hasn't been out, but some of it also hasn't been researched enough and dug in deeper enough. And then they let these people talk, and they can say whatever they want to say because they're not under oath either. And if you have an affidavit that's on their oath and you go, here you go, but you said that, how are you going to explain that? And that particular moment is, sadly enough, it's been missed a lot of times. They got away with it.
Yep.
So.
Not called to account at all, really. I don't think a lot of the people that were involved at the time had any idea that that so much documentation would be released.
No,
Hell of a lot.
no,
Hell of a
not
lot.
just released, let alone created. Because, I mean, for a lone gunman to create millions of pages of material, you know, because any other so-called open and shut case, right, is what? You can put it in maybe 5 ring binders and 5 or 6 ring binders, and we're done. Here you go. You know, instead of that, we've got practically every agency involved. I don't think the only one that hasn't been involved was the forestry agency of some sort, but other than that, everybody else was practically involved with it, and they had documents about Oswald or the shenanigans around him as such. And, you know, there's so much stuff for a lone gunman that's just ridiculous, you know. So
Yeah, a lot of the agencies didn't provide anything. U.S. Customs didn't provide anything to the review board, just a few pages, and they got away with it. You know, and DIA, they must have had truckloads of stuff, and they got 3 boxes or 2 boxes, nothing. So some people really did get away with it, and CIA, I have to say, they did provide a lot of material. They did provide a lot of material. It's but some of the other agencies are just really defective. ATF should have a mountain of stuff. I think.
yeah, they weren't called ATF at the time, but
Yeah,
I know what you mean.
yeah, but just 1 or 2 documents.
Yeah, the whole weapons shenanigans with what's his name? God, he's now in his 80s. I think he's still alive. Of which they said he was the perfect mirror image of Oswald as such.
John Thomas Mason.
Oh, that's it. Yeah, John Thomas Mason. Yeah, he's still around, but they always said no, I'm not. They get found
I did
on
meet
gun
him.
shows.
Yeah, it's all right. I did meet him there.
Yeah?
Yeah, one time. He was quite big. You get this image of Mason, quite a small guy, and then you meet him at a gun show and he's like huge.
And what did he say to you?
No, I didn't ask him anything about
No?
the case. No.
Oh, okay. Right, let's end the part 1. Thank you.